Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive.
Hi there. Yeah, today we're journeying to a place that feels um, incredibly alive. It's a corner of northeastern California shaped by forces you can practically feel. Lassen Volcanic National Park.
And for this deep dive, we've got this whole stack of sources you shared with us, articles, research papers, even some personal notes.
Right.
Our mission really is to sift through all of it, pull out the most important bits of knowledge and insight, and basically give you that shortcut to being truly well informed about Lassen.
It's a pretty remarkable landscape. Covers just over, 106,000 acres. And what's really striking, looking at these sources, is that its status as a national park established back in 1916 was a direct response to something huge.
The eruptions, right?
Exactly. The dramatic eruptions of Lassen Peak that had only started a couple of years before in 1914.
Wow, a park literally born from a volcano. And, one thing that comes through in these notes is that because it's maybe a little less famous than, say, Yosemite or Sequoia, it's often less crowded.
That's a good point. Its relative remoteness can mean, a more intimate experience with that raw, natural power.
And that power, it's all rooted in the park's geology, the volcanism.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's right there at the southern end of the Cascade Range, part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, obviously. But it's in this really unique spot geologically.
Oh, so?
Well, it's where 4 different geologic provinces actually meet. The Cascades, the Sierra Nevada, the Klamath Mountains, and the Basin and Range Province.
Huh, like a geological 4 corners.
Yeah.
So take us back, like way back. What were the first big things shaping this place?
We're talking hundreds of millions of years,
Mm.
cycles of mountains rising, mountains eroding away, and incredibly periods where this land was actually under ancient seas.
Seas up there.
Yeah, the sources mention something called the Lassen Strait around 70 million years ago. Apparently, it connected marine basins right where the park is now.
Hard to picture that. So, okay, the land eventually rose up, the seas went away. What came next in the fiery part of the story?
Right, so uplift pushed the seas out, and then early volcanic activity started building up the Western Cascades. You also had these massive floods of lava pouring out to the north and east, laying the groundwork for the Columbia and Modoc Plateaus.
Okay.
Then, maybe 1 or 2 million years ago, the Great Ice Age kicked in.
Ah, the glaciers, always sculpting things.
Exactly. For thousands and thousands of years, glaciers just carved out canyons, dug out basins that became lakes, and shaped the peaks themselves. Lassen Peak was actually a major center for glaciation.
Mm.
But before Lassen Peak looked the way it does now, there were these other colossal volcanoes there first.
Giants, like bigger than Lassen.
Oh yeah, giants. The sources talk about ancient mud flows, part of what's called the Tuscan Formation, coming from volcanoes like Mount Yana and Mount Medu, starting millions of years back.
Mm.
But the really big one, the main predecessor, was this huge stratovolcano called Mount Teama.
Also known as Broke-Off Volcano.
That's the one, a stratovolcano, the classic cone shape. And Mount Tehama was enormous, estimated maybe 11,000 feet tall.
Whoa.
And the peaks you see today forming a sort of broken circle in the southwest part of the park.
Yeah.
Like Broke-Off Mountain, Mount Diller, Pilot Pinnacle.
Yeah.
Those are actually what's left of its caldera rim after it collapsed.
No way.
Yeah. And Sulphur Works, that really accessible hydrocummal spot, that marks where its central vent used to be.
So Sulphurworks is literally the heart of an ancient, collapsed supervolcano. That's incredible. And its collapse then made way for Lassen Peak to form later.
Exactly. This whole layered history, that's what makes Lassen so geologically fascinating. And maybe the most unique thing, according to these sources. Lassen Park contains examples of all 4 major types of volcanoes found worldwide, all within its borders.
Okay, hold on. That is amazing. Like a living museum of volcanoes.
Right.
What are the 4 types then?
Okay, so first you've got the plug dome. Lassen Peak itself is a prime example.
Right.
That's formed when really thick, viscous, sticky lava erupts and just piles up right over the vent. Creates a steep, rounded dome. And Lassen Peak is actually one of the biggest plug domes on Earth.
Got it. Sticky lava makes a dome. What's next?
Then you have shield volcanoes. Prospect Peak is the example there. These are built by really fluid lava flows that spread out wide, creating those broad, gently sloping cones. Think Hawaii.
Right, wide and flattish, like a shield lying down.
Third is the cinder cone. And, well, the park has cinder cone.
Makes sense.
These form from more explosive eruptions, throwing out ash and volcanic gravel, basically cinders, that pile up into a steep little hill.
Like a big pile of volcanic pebbles.
Sort of, yeah. And finally, the composite volcano, or stratovolcano. That's your classic, often symmetrical cone built up from alternating layers of lava flows, ash, cinders. Mount Tahama, the ancient one, was this type.
So plug dome, shield, cinder cone composite, to have all four right there, that really is special.
It absolutely is. And the park's more recent history, of course, is defined by eruptions, too. Most importantly, the Lassen Peak eruptions from 1914 to 1917.
The ones that actually created the park.
Directly. They started relatively small, May 1914, mostly steam blasts. But the big one, the climax, was May 22nd, 1915.
What happened then?
A massive explosive eruption. The sources describe this huge mushroom cloud of ash and steam going over 30,000 feet high.
30,000 feet must have been visible for ages.
For hundreds of miles, apparently. And it unleashed devastating pyroclastic flows, those super fast currents of hot gas and rock and lahars, volcanic mud flows, especially down the northeast side. Ash fell for hundreds of kilometers to the east.
And that was the last major eruption in the Cascades until Mount St. Helens blew in 1980. So that event really put Lassen on the map.
It was the catalyst, no question.
Yeah.
And then there was another important eruption at Cinder Cone, maybe 350 years ago, mid-17th century.
Ah, right.
And that's what created the fantastic lava beds, those cool painted dunes.
So even though Lassen Peak itself is dormant now, the ground underneath is definitely not sleeping. It's still active. You see that in the hydrothermal features.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the USGS, the California Volcano Observatory, they keep a close eye on it. They monitor earthquakes, ground swelling or sinking, gas emissions, water chemistry, looking for any signs of change.
Let's talk about some of those other cool geological spots. The devastated area sounds pretty intense.
It is. It's a stark reminder of the power of those 1915 lahars and pyroclastic flows.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, amazing to see how the landscape is recovering. There's a little interpretive trail there that tells the story.
And then Chaos Crags and Chaos Jumbles. I mean, the name alone.
It fits. The crags are pretty young lava domes, geologically speaking. And about 350 years ago, huge chunks of them just collapsed.
Yeah.
Massive rock avalanches.
Traveling over 100 miles an hour. That's just insane.
Insane speed. They roared down the slopes, covered square miles in this jumble of rock, apparently even surged partway up Table Mountain nearby. The landscape it left behind is this really weird, hummocky terrain. The sources call it frozen waves of rock.
Wow.
And it's a good reminder that volcanoes aren't the only hazard. These massive landslides can happen too.
Right. Then you've got the fantastic lava beds, those blocky black lava flows from Cinder Cone. They actually changed the drainage, didn't they?
They did. Dammed up creeks and formed Snag Lake and Butte Lake. Landscape engineering, volcano style.
And the painted dunes near Cinder Cone, how did they get those colors?
It's pretty cool. The sources say when the hot ash from Cinder Cone landed on still hot lava flows, minerals in the ash oxidized, basically rusted, creating those vibrant reds, oranges, yellows, like geology's paint palette.
But I think for a lot of visitors, the most visceral connection to the park's energy is those hydrothermal features. The steam, the smells, the bubbling mud.
Oh, they're captivating. You've got fumaroles, which are steam and gas vents, mud pots, that bubbling clay, boiling pools, steaming ground.
How does it all work? Where's the heat coming from?
Well, the heat source is the magma body, relatively shallow beneath the Lassen Peak highlands. Rain and snowmelt seep down deep into the ground, get heated up by that magma body.
And then rise back up.
Exactly. If it comes up as hot water, you get boiling pools or mud pots. Those are often acidic because volcanic gases like sulfur dioxide dissolve in the water. If the water flashes into steam underground and escapes through cracks, you get the fumaroles, often hissing and roaring.
And the sources say this is the largest, best exposed hydrothermal system in the whole Cascade Range. That sounds significant.
It really is. It pumps out a lot of heat, around 140 megawatts total, according to these notes. That's about a third of the high-temperature heat output for the entire U.S. part of the Cascades. It tells you there's still a substantial, though cooling, magma body down there.
And these features aren't static, right? They change.
Oh, definitely. They're dynamic. Temperatures can fluctuate, acidity can change, the amount of water or steam coming out can vary. It depends on the underground heat flow, how much groundwater is available, even earthquake activity. They're like little windows into what's happening below.
So if you're visiting, where are the must-see hydrothermal spots?
Well, Sulphurworks is the easiest to get to. Right near the southwest entrance, paved path, you can walk right up to see mud pots and steam vents. And yeah, you'll smell the sulfur. Plus, remember that's the site of old Mount Tahama's vent.
Adds a bit of history to the aroma.
Doesn't it? Then the biggest area is Bumpass Hell. Needs about a 3-mile round-trip hike, but it's incredible. Boardwalks take you safely through this whole basin just boiling and steaming with roaring fumaroles and these thumping mud pots.
Bumpass Hill. Didn't someone get burned there?
Yeah, that's the story. Kendall V. Bumpass, an early explorer, apparently stepped off the path back in 1865 and scalded his leg badly. A cautionary tale built right into the name.
Ouch. Okay, where else?
Devil's Kitchen is another big one over the Warner Valley area. It's a bit longer hike, maybe 4.4 miles round trip. Lots of steam vents and mud pots there, too. And also in Warner Valley is Boiling Springs Lake.
A whole boiling lake.
Well, not quite boiling, but hot. Around 125 degrees Fahrenheit, heated by vents underwater. There are mud pots along the shore, too. That's an easier 3-mile hike.
The sources also mention cold boiling lake, which isn't hot, just bubbling with CO2.
Right. Looks like it's boiling, but it's cold. And Terminal Geyser, which is actually a powerful steam vent in a creek, not a true geyser. And you can see steam rising from places like Little Hot Springs Valley from the road.
Okay, these sound amazing, but that Bumpass story, the safety aspect seems huge here.
It is absolutely critical. This might be the single most important piece of advice for visiting Lassen. You must stay on the marked trails and boardwalks in all hydrothermal areas, period.
Why is it so dangerous?
Because the ground looks solid, but it's often just a thin crust over scalding hot, acidic water and mud. If you step through, it's severe, potentially life-threatening burns instantly. You have to watch kids like a hawk.
Okay, message received. Stay on the path. Always.
Always. Now, shifting from the heat to the life it supports, Lassen has amazing biodiversity, especially for a volcanic park.
Yeah, the sources mentioned it's at that crossroads again, Cascade, Sierra Nevada, Great Basin Biological Provinces meeting, so you get a mix of plants and animals.
Exactly. Species from all three regions overlap here, and they're adapted to all sorts of conditions. The big elevation range from 5,000 feet up to over 10,000, different amounts of moisture, those unique volcanic soils, fire, it all adds up. Over 700 types of flowering plants, around 300 kinds of vertebrate animals.
And the elevation creates different zones, right, like layers of life.
Precisely. Lower down, below about 6,500 feet, you have the mixed conifer forest. Ponderosa pine, Jeffrey pine, sugar pine, white fir. You find things like black bears, mule deer here.
Then higher up, maybe 6,500 to 8,000 feet.
That's the red fir forest, dominated by red fir, western white pine. Animals like the pine marten live there.
And then way up high,
above 8,000 feet, you get into the subalpine zone. Getting close to the tree line, much sparser vegetation. Hardy stuff like whitebark pine, mountain hemlock, and animals adapted to the harsh conditions like the American picas, Clark's nutcracker.
You mentioned whitebark pine. The sources call it a keystone species. Why is it so important?
It's absolutely crucial up high. Its seeds are a super important food source, especially for the Clark's nutcracker. And the nutcracker plays a vital role by burying thousands of these seeds each year.
And forgetting where some are.
Exactly. So those forgotten seeds sprout into new trees. It's this perfect partnership, mutualism. Plus, whitebark pines are tough. They can grow on those rocky volcanic slopes where other trees struggle. They're pioneers.
Interesting. And I saw a note about Lassen paintbrush maybe only being found in the park.
Yeah, possible endemic species, unique to the area. The sheer number of lichen species, over 110, is also cool. They're these symbiotic organisms, part fungus, part alga, that help create soil and tell us about air quality. And just seeing plants coming back in the devastated area or chaos jumbles, it's incredible resilience.
What about the animals? Anything particularly rare or with cool adaptations?
Well, you got the pika, those little rabbit relatives living in the high rock piles, gathering grasses all summer. Black bears are around, often cinnamon or brown colored here, not just black. But the real celebrity animal, though incredibly rare to see, is the Sierra Nevada red fox.
Right, one of California's rarest mammals.
It is. Lassen holds one of the very few known populations left. They have amazing adaptations for living high up in the snow, like dense fur on the bottom of their paws for insulation and traction, kind of like snowshoes. Seeing one, or even signs of one, is a huge deal.
And lots of birds, over 200 species. We mentioned the Clark's nutcracker and its pine seeds.
Yeah, and woodpeckers are fascinating too. The sources mention the white-headed woodpecker and red-breasted sapsucker. They have these incredibly specialized tongues, some barbed, some brush-tipped, strong bills for drilling, stiff tail feathers to prop themselves up. And they play a big role after fires, eating bark beetles and creating cavities in dead trees that other birds and mammals then use for nests.
Okay, this next connection is wild. The sources link Lassen to outer space, astrobiology.
It sounds sci-fi, but it's real. Lassen's hydrothermal features the hot springs. The mud pots are essentially natural laboratories. Scientists study the microorganisms living there, called extremophiles.
Extremophiles. Because they love extreme conditions.
Exactly. High heat, high acidity, lots of sulfur conditions that would kill most life forms. But these microbes thrive.
Okay, but how does that link to space?
Well, the conditions these extremophiles tolerate here on Earth might be similar to environments that exist, or used to exist, on other planets, especially Mars. The Mars rovers have found evidence suggesting ancient hot springs and hydrothermal systems near Martian volcanoes.
So studying life in Lassen's hot springs could give clues about what Martian life might have looked like or where to search for fossils.
Precisely. NASA's Ames Research Center actively does research in Lassen for this very reason, studying these microbes as analogs for potential extraterrestrial life. It connects this corner of California to the biggest questions, are we alone?
Wow. That definitely puts Bumpass Hell in a different light. Okay, let's shift to the human story. People have been part of this landscape for a long, long time.
Thousands of years. The land was ancestral territory used seasonally by at least 4 Native American groups: the Otsujui, Yana, Yahi, and Maidu.
Seasonally. Why not year-round?
Mainly because of the high elevation and deep winter snows. It wasn't practical for permanent villages, but they came up in summer and fall for hunting, gathering plants, spiritual practices. Specific areas were traditionally used by different groups.
And the visitor center name, Komyamani.
That's Mountain Maidu for Snow Mountain, a direct link to their name for Lassen Peak and their connection to this place. Archaeological finds are mostly things like stone tools, points, which fits with that seasonal use pattern. And the story of Ishi, the last known member of the Yahi people, is tragically tied to this region too.
Does the park work with the tribes today?
Yes, the Park Service collaborates with descendant communities now to share their cultural heritage through exhibits, demonstrations, and programs.
Then came European Americans. Jedediah Smith passed through early on, 1828.
Right, one of the first known explorers. But it was really the gold rush in the 1840s and 50s that brought significant numbers of settlers nearby. The Big Peak was a landmark. Peter Lassen, the Danish immigrant the park is named after, tried to establish an emigrant trail route near here. Didn't quite work out for him.
But William Nobles' trail was more successful.
Yeah, the Nobles Emigrant Trail from the 1850s became a pretty important northern route into California, and you can still see traces of it in the park. Early settlers also tried other things: mining, ranching. Matthias Supan actually mined sulfur at Sulfur Works back in 1865.
Dr. Supan's paint mine.
That's what he called it. His family later developed it for tourism, mineral baths, and such, before the Park Service eventually acquired it in the 1950s.
So there was already some tourism and resource use happening.
A little bit. But the huge turning point, the thing that really led to protection, was those 1914-1917 eruptions we talked about.
They got national attention.
Big time. Showed everyone how unique and powerful this place was. Congress acted relatively quickly, establishing the park on August 9th, 1916.
And that early protection saved a lot of the old-growth forest from logging. Right?
Absolutely crucial. Benjamin F. Loomis, the photographer who documented the eruptions so well, was also key. His photos raised public awareness, and he later established the museum near Manzanita Lake.
Capturing history as it happened. Okay, so for someone listening who's inspired to visit now, how do they actually experience Lassen? What are the must-dos?
Well, vein artery is the Lassen Volcanic National Park Highway, Route 89. It's about 30 miles long, runs through the western side of the park. It's quite an engineering feat, clinging to the mountainsides, and gives you access to most of the major highlights. You'll definitely want to drive it slowly, pull over a lot.
He stops along that road.
Definitely Sulfur Works near the south entrance. The trailhead for Bumpass Hell, Lake Helen, gorgeous high-elevation lake. The Lassen Peak Trailhead, if you're feeling ambitious, and the devastated area Interpretive Trail.
And for stretching your legs. Over 150 miles of trails.
Yeah, something for everyone, from paved, accessible loops to really strenuous summit climbs. It's worth noting, though, that many trails do go through areas burned in the 2021 Dixie Fire.
Right. So you can see the recovery process, but need to be careful.
Exactly. Be aware of potential hazards like falling trees or unstable slopes in those burn zones. Always check current conditions.
What are a couple of absolute classic hikes?
Well, you really should experience Bumpass Hell. That 3-mile round trip takes you right into the heart of the hydrothermal action safely on the boardwalks. It's just unforgettable sound and smell and sight.
And the big one, Lassen Peak.
The Lassen Peak Trail. It's tough. 5 miles round trip, pretty steep, loose rock near the top. But the panoramic views from the summit of that huge plug dome, worth every step. You feel like you're on top of the world.
The Cinder Cone Trail sounds interesting, too, climbing up the side of it.
It is. It's about 4 miles round trip. And yeah, climbing that loose, cindery slope is hard work. It feels like 2 steps forward, 1 step back sometimes. But the view from the rim, looking down into the crater and out over those fantastic lava beds and painted dunes, spectacular, different kind of volcanic landscape.
And for something easier, maybe with that iconic view.
The Manzanita Lake Loop. It's only 1.7 miles, flat, paved, accessible, and you get those perfect reflections of Lassen Peak in the lake. Great for families or just a beautiful stroll.
Plus, seeing those hydrothermal features up close. But always, always.
Stay on the marked trails and boardwalks. Yes, I know we keep saying it, but it's that important. The danger is real and severe.
Got it. Okay, water. Lots of lakes in Lassen, many formed by volcanic stuff like lava flows damming creeks.
Yeah, Manzanita Lake is the famous example formed by that Chaos Crags avalanche. It's popular for swimming, fishing, kayaking, paddleboarding, non-motorized boats only. And that busy loop trail goes around it.
Lake Helen sounds beautiful too, high up, deep blue.
Named for Helen Tanner Brott, the first woman known to summit Lassen Peak back in 1864. It often stays frozen late into the summer.
And Summit Lake, Juniper Lake, Butte Lake offer camping and boating too, maybe a bit more remote?
Generally, yes, Juniper and Butte are in the eastern, less visited sections. It really highlights how destructive events, eruptions, landslides can actually create new habitats, new beauty, like these lakes.
A powerful cycle indeed. And camping seems like a great way to immerse yourself. Dark skies, too.
Oh, the stargazing can be phenomenal. There are 8 developed campgrounds, all pretty high elevation, over 5,600 feet.
What do people need to know about camping there?
Well, you get that immersive nature experience. Standard amenities like potable water, usually seasonal, restrooms, bear lockers are at every campsite. You absolutely have to store food and anything scented properly. Bears are active.
Any hookups for RVs?
No. No RV hookups in any park campgrounds. And one critical note from the sources, Juniper Lake Campground has no potable water. You must bring all the water you need if you camp there. Reservations are definitely a good idea, especially in summer.
Good tip. And for getting oriented, visitor centers.
2 main ones. The Komyamani Visitor Center at the southwest entrance is the big, year-round one. Exhibits, film, infodesk, ranger programs, cafe, even Wi-Fi. And again, that name means Snow Mountain in Maydew.
And the other one?
The Loomis Museum, near Manzanita Lake at the northwest entrance. It's historic, usually open just in summer. That's where you see B.F. Loomis's incredible photos of the 1914-15 eruptions. Also has exhibits on volcanic history, cultural history, and sometimes hosts tribal cultural demonstrations.
Okay, beyond the main highway and the most popular trails, are there any best-kept secrets the sources point to? Places for more solitude?
The sources definitely flag Warner Valley in the southeast as one of those spots, described as out of the way, quieter. It's the access point for Devil's Kitchen and Boiling Springs Lake hikes.
So heading east or south seems key for fewer crowds.
Generally, yeah. The areas around Juniper Lake and Butte Lake on the east side also offer more solitude and access to backcountry trails, like towards Horseshoe Lake or Snag Lake. The Mount Harkness Trail near Juniper Lake goes up to an old fire lookout tower with amazing panoramic views. That sounds like a gem.
And exploring the chaos jumbles off-trail. For experienced folks.
For experienced hikers comfortable with route finding and rugged terrain, yeah. Getting a closer look at those frozen waves of rock could be really unique. Also, just outside the park boundary to the north, there's Subway Cave, which is a lava tube cave you can walk through.
Cool. Any other unique experiences mentioned?
Staying at Drake's Bed Guest Ranch in Warner Valley. It's historic lodging, offers horseback riding, hiking, and has a pool fed by hot springs. Gives you a taste of early Lassen tourism.
And that astrobiology connection.
Right. Just visiting the hydrothermal areas, knowing that scientists study them as Mars analogs, adds this whole other layer. It's like an intellectual secret weapon for appreciating the place.
Plus, the stargazing. It's an official dark sky park.
The high elevation and lack of light pollution make the night skies incredible. Milky Way splashed across the sky. Sometimes they have ranger programs focused on astronomy.
In winter. Sounds challenging, but rewarding.
Totally different world. Serene, quiet, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, seeing steam rising from fumaroles next to frozen lakes. It's a stark contrast. Manzanita Lake Campground usually stays open with limited services for winter camping.
And maybe spotting rare wildlife takes patience.
Definitely. Seeing pikas, Clark's nutcrackers is fairly common if you're looking. But catching a glimpse of a Sierra Nevada red fox, that requires serious luck and patience.
So tips for finding solitude are basically go shoulder season, explore east or south, start hikes early or late.
Or go backpacking. Lots of designated wilderness, get a permit, head out for multiple days. That's guaranteed solitude.
Looking ahead, what's the future hold for Lassen? The sources talk about conservation, research, ongoing work.
Yeah, the park isn't just static. The National Park Service is always planning, managing. They have public processes for things like managing the Manzanita Lake area or backcountry use. They've done major projects already, like restoring wetlands in Warner Valley, making the Bumpass Hell Trail safer and more sustainable, rehabilitating the Lassen Peak Trail.
And dealing with fire risk and impacts.
Huge focus now, especially after the Dixie Fire. They're doing proactive work, thinning vegetation, using prescribed fire carefully to try and make the forests more resilient to future wildfires and climate change, improving watershed health, too.
That 2021 Dixie Fire was massive, though, burned over 70% of the park.
A staggering amount. So the park is still very much in recovery mode. Assessing damage, repairing trails and roads, managing hazards like falling snags or potential debris flows after heavy rain. Visitors need to be really aware of conditions in bird areas, check for closures, but it's also a chance to see natural recovery in action.
And the science continues.
Oh yeah, USGS and NPS constantly monitor the volcanic and hydrothermal systems for hazards. NASA keeps studying the extremophiles for astrobiology insights. State wildlife agencies and partners are tracking that tiny Sierra Nevada red fox population to figure out how best to help them recover. Plus, ecological monitoring, how forests regrow after fire, how climate change affects snowpack, tracking invasive species. Lassen is a living laboratory.
Okay, wrapping up with the practical stuff. If someone's planning a visit, what are the absolute essentials to know for logistics and safety?
First, check the official park website. nps.gov/lavo. Seriously, check it right before you go. Conditions change constantly. Road closures, trail closures due to snow or fire damage. It's all there.
The main park highway isn't open year-round.
Correct. Highway 89 usually closes from late fall, sometimes October, until late spring or early summer, maybe June or even July, depending on the snowpack.
Oh.
So winter access is very limited, mainly to the visitor center areas at the north and south ends. High elevation trails like Bumpass Hell also close seasonally.
Best times, generally summer for full access, but spring and fall are good for fewer crowds if you don't mind potential lingering snow or early closures.
Right, getting there. Usually fly into Reno or Sacramento, then it's a 3-4 hour drive. Main entrances are off Highway 44 north of the park and Highway 89 south of the park. There's an entrance fee, or you can use your America the Beautiful or other park passes.
And safety. We've hit the hydrothermal warning hard. What else?
Altitude. The park is high. Lassen Peak is over 10,500 feet. The road goes over 8,500 feet. Be aware of altitude sickness, headache, nausea, unusual fatigue. Drink lots of water. Take it easy your first day. Descend if symptoms get worse.
Wildlife safety.
Standard stuff. Store your food, toiletries, anything smelly properly. Use the bear lockers at campgrounds. Store food in a hard-sided vehicle if day tripping. Never ever feed any wildlife. Weather can change in minutes up there. Be prepared for cold, wind, rain, even snow any time of year. Layers are key.
And those burned areas from the Dixie Fire.
Be extra cautious. Look up and around for unstable trees or branches, especially on windy days. Be aware of potential for flash floods or debris flows during heavy rain. Check park alerts for specific hazards or closures in burn zones. And always carry plenty of water or a way to treat water from streams or lakes.
Okay, so pulling all this together from the sources, what's the essence of Lassen Volcanic National Park?
I think it's this incredible intersection where the raw, visible power of the Earth, the volcanism, the hydrothermal systems, the deep geologic time meets the tenacity and diversity of life. And woven through that is this long human history, and now cutting-edge science.
A place of constant change, really. Destruction and creation happening side by side.
Yeah, transformation is the key word. It offers just so much for exploration, for quiet thought, for appreciating these immense natural forces, from geology to ecology to, amazingly, astrobiology.
It really does. So here's a final thought, something these sources make you wonder about. When you stand in a place like Lassen, shaped by these huge, violent events, eruptions, avalanches, fires, and you see life persist, adapt, even thrive in the aftermath, creating new landscapes, new opportunities, what does that really tell us about the relationship between destruction and creation? Is it always a cycle? Does one always inevitably lead to the other, even on these massive scales?
That's a deep one. Definitely something to ponder while you're looking out from Lassen Peak or watching steam rise from the Earth.
Indeed. Well, thank you for sharing all these sources that let us take this deep dive into Lassen Volcanic National Park today.